I just had pizza, so.
I'm sort of wondering at this point what expect.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 6th, 2024 Finance Meeting. I acknowledge the Sianiu and Tsuut'ina Nations on whose land we live, work, and play. This acknowledgement is only one small part of supporting Indigenous communities. And we continue each day to listen, learn, and act to support truth and reconciliation. Please be sure to have your cell phones off during the meeting. There are two meetings this evening, the finance meeting, followed by a council meeting, and there will be a public participation at each of those specific meetings. So committee, we have an agenda before us. There is one addition with a group which we will put at 2C. It's to do with the grant and aid presentations this evening. Is there anything else? Councillor Gray?
Move adoption.
Move adoption. Second by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And presentations. So this evening we have Ione Smith from Upland Agricultural Consulting Limited and doing the introduction to the Metchosin Agricultural Area Plan and presenting us with a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back in Metchosin. It's a beautiful evening. I stopped to take some pictures because there was a beautiful rainbow. So I thought that was a good omen. I'm here to, with pleasure, present the agricultural area plan for the district of Metchosin that I've had the pleasure of working on for over the past year. Let's see if I can get this to work.
Let me just check for you.
Maybe just have to point it in a very special spot.
No, it's just this. That should be good now.
Great, thank you. So I first of all want to acknowledge that I was not working on this project by myself. I'm with Upland Agricultural Consulting. I'm the senior agrologist on staff, but we have a team of 5, and there were 2 other individuals that contributed to a large degree on the project, and that was Sydney and Amelia, and they were both at the open house back in February, so some of you may have been able to meet them as well. And we also worked closely with the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee as well, and there's members in the audience here tonight from that committee. There were several goals and objectives of embarking upon the agricultural area plan. So first of all, there was a desire to create a guiding document that would help to strengthen the agricultural sector with the goal of longer-term sustainability for the community. The project was commissioned by the district and it was done in collaboration with the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee. The overall objective was to identify strengths and opportunities to improve the sector by putting forward some recommendations, specific actions through which the district as well as the community could collaborate together to be undertaken in a way that would serve to benefit the overall agricultural sector. So with that in mind, we embarked upon about a year-long process. It started with pulling together a background report, and I'll speak a little bit about that in the subsequent slide. We also undertook quite a lot of engagement, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, so I know that either myself or Sydney or Amelia met with many people here. And we, with that information, drafted the agricultural area plan, and then we wanted to make sure that we could vet it to the community. So we hosted an open house at Bilson Creek Farm back in February to generate some more discussion and get a sense of that general feedback on the draft plan. And then through that information and input, we went back and finalized the agricultural plan, which you have in front of you tonight. With regards to the background report, what it helped to do is give us a sense of the context for the community. What type of agriculture is going on? What is the scale and scope of agriculture? What is the land base like? What type of farming is happening? How farm products are being sold? And also, what is the level of the economic prosperity of some of the farms? So interestingly, we found that there is obviously a lot of land under production, but there's still quite a lot of agricultural land, reserve land, considered available for farming. There's a good mix of farming types in the community, as you all know, a good mix of livestock, tree fruits, and vegetables, but the most common product being marketed is mixed vegetable farming, so nearly half of the farms listed mixed vegetables as their primary product. Half of producers in the community are selling by farm stand, direct to consumer, and compared to some of the other communities that I've worked in, that's a very high number. And I think it speaks to the proximity of the community to larger markets and the draw of Metchosin itself to other communities and having people come to the community. We did find, however, that most producers, more than half, were reporting less than $10,000 of annual revenue from farming, and that's gross revenue. This is not that uncommon across British Columbia. There are, particularly in communities where there's small-scale agriculture occurring, some of those farms are not earning a lot of money, and sometimes that's because the goal of the operation isn't necessarily for a commercial, but more of a lifestyle end goal. I mentioned that we undertook a lot of engagement, so here's just some highlights. We undertook 15 interviews with stakeholders, so primarily farmers within the community. We also developed 2 surveys that were available online and through hard copy. One was directed towards the general community, so not necessarily those who are involved in farming, because we wanted to get a sense of what their spending patterns were, where they're buying their food, what their support level is for agriculture. And that survey was successful. We received nearly 300 responses. The second survey was geared more towards the agri-food sector. Now for that survey, people needed to self-identify if they were a farmer, and we received 76 responses to that. I mentioned we also held an open house at Bilston Creek Farm, and at that event there were 30 attendees. The draft agricultural area plan also benefited from being reviewed externally by staff from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Agricultural Land Commission as well. Some of the key findings from the engagement that helped to inform the agricultural area plan were as follows. First of all, the community is very interested in buying more farm products from Metchosin producers. There was a sense from the community that they were, unless they were driving around and buying from farm stands, that they were not necessarily easy to find in the store, in stores around Metchosin, and that it would, in generally, they would like to have more opportunities to be able to purchase farm products. Secondly, not just residents, but visitors as well would like to have more opportunities to participate in agritourism in Metchosin. What was interesting is that agritourism wasn't necessarily the highest priority for farmers, so that was something that came out as an interesting finding. Thirdly, Metchosin's high land values are creating multiple challenges to farming, and that's probably no surprise to any of you. But the way that that plays out on the ground is that it becomes harder for new entrants or those who would like to get into farming, as well as those who would like to expand a successful farming operation from doing so because the land is simply too expensive to create, to make ends meet through agriculture. And so what you have is a complicated issue around tenure and land tenure and how to make sure that land is being held in productive agricultural state and being leased or finding other opportunities for land tenure. Fourth is that support from government will be critical to expanding the Metchosin agricultural sector. And that points to issues that are probably outside of the scope of the district in some respects. So issues such as labor, temporary farm worker, housing, being able to sell in stores without having to go through the GAP certification process. So there was a few issues that were identified that we didn't just leave in a parking lot per se, but we wanted to acknowledge that they were perhaps outside of the scope of local government. And that also includes climate change. So the fifth one there was that local agriculture has an important role to play in climate change adaptation, mitigation, and biodiversity, but at the same time it's being highly impacted by those effects as well. So with that information and through our discussion and engagement and meetings with the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee, we put forward a vision statement. And the purpose of the vision statement was to provide a forward-thinking end goal through which we could then reverse engineer, so to speak, the goals, objectives, and recommendations of the plan to create a roadmap of how to get to this statement. So the statement is, the Metchosin community collaborates to support productive farms using a diversity of land tenure solutions to create a robust local economy and contribute to climate change resilience. With that in mind, we came up with 3 goals and 18 specific recommendations. I'm going to go through these here. I'm not going to belabor any of them in particular, but you'll see in the actual plan that each of these actions has a very specific description and series of actions associated with them. So for under goal number 1, which is around specifically the land base and how to protect farmland for farming, there are several actions. The first 4 are, and before I go into that, I will mention the other columns. So LEAD means the organization or the entity that is going to be required to take a leadership role to implement the action. Supports are other organizations or groups that we've identified that will need to be at the table to support implementation. And then the time frame you'll see is either ongoing, short, medium, or long. And sometimes you'll see an asterisk, like for example 1.4, that simply means that it's likely that external funding will be required as well. So the first one is to continue to strengthen Metchosin policies to support agriculture. So this really speaks to tools such as the official community plan and other supportive policies. And 1.2 goes hand in hand with that, and that is around updating the zoning bylaw. And we've listed some specific examples where we've noted areas of the zoning bylaw that could benefit from some updates, and we've included that in the appendix. The third is to advocate to other levels of government for legislation that would support productive stewardship of the agricultural land base. Examples might include discussing with the province and BC assessment around moving some of the tools around taxation to encourage productivity of the land base, for example. Number 1.4 is to continue to support the establishment of a food land access program in the CRD, Capital Regional District. And a lot of the discussion centered around the need potentially for a Metchosin specific farmland trust as well. Continuing on with goal number 1 around the farmland base, number 1.5 was to improve data sets pertaining to the agriculture in Metchosin. This came up because when we were looking at trying to distill real data around what was happening on the farm in Metchosin, it was hard. We came up with all of the data sets that were out there were imperfect. We were struggling with the agricultural census, which is federal, because the census boundaries included Souk, for example, and other areas of the southwest Vancouver Island. The agricultural land use inventory that the province undertakes was also imperfect because it's just a 1-day windshield survey, so often details are missed, and so on and so forth. So what we recommended is that there really needs to be something that's done on a more repetitive basis, such as a survey, and maybe the local Metchosin farming community can go about making sure that those maps are updated. And one thing that I understand is that even in the last few weeks, there's already been a meeting with the Ministry of Agriculture to update some of the land use inventory maps, which is fantastic. 1.6 is to support succession planning and the establishment of new entrants. There's lots of ways that the farming community can do that. Again, we didn't list the district here as a lead or supporting role because it's sort of outside of the jurisdiction, but it came up enough that it was clear that it was an important priority for the farming community. And lastly, under goal 1 was to engage and educate the community about best practices in living in or near agricultural areas. So in almost every community we work in, there are conflicts between neighbors, not only between non-farming and farming neighbors, but sometimes between farming neighbors themselves. But generally it happens when there's not enough buffer between like more suburban land use and agricultural land use, or if you have folks moving into the agricultural land reserve who don't necessarily have a desire to farm, but they're there perhaps more for a rural lifestyle, and so they get irked if there's noises or smells, for example, coming from farms. So there's ways that local governments can support the farming community by disseminating information around things like the Right to Farm Act, what are permitted uses within the agricultural land reserve, and so on. Moving on to goal number 2. Goal number 2 really focused the theme here around economic viability. So what we wanted to do is shine a light on how the current farming community is doing a really good job of supporting itself, but that there's a need to open up the door, so to speak, so that there's more of an opportunity for those who would like to access Metchosin farm products to be able to buy them. So first and foremost, there was a need to identify an existing organization or potentially a new one, but there's the sense that an existing organization can probably bear the load of implementing this plan or establish a new group if that isn't the case. So already the farming community has been meeting with groups such as the Metchosin Producers Association, the Metchosin Farmers Institute, and the South Vancouver Island Farmers Institute as well to try to determine who needs to sort of come together to push the ball up the hill and do things like apply for grants and also connect to other organizations in order to make sure that the plan is implemented. It was recognized that the capacity of the district itself might be limited, and so there was a real need in this case for the farming community to take a lead role. With that in mind, there was also an understanding that new forms of routes to market is an important thing to examine. So not necessarily simply relying on that farm gate, farm stand model, but looking at online sales, for example, looking at bringing Metchosin food to other communities, whether it's by participating in other farmers markets or speaking to produce managers at grocery stores in nearby communities. And thirdly is to explore opportunities to buy inputs in bulk. It's expensive to run a farm these days. It's expensive to purchase your livestock feed, your seeds, compost, and so forth. And so there's an opportunity for the farming community to come together, form either a formal or informal cooperative, and purchase some of these items in bulk. The last four around Goal 2 are around marketing and that value-added post-production piece. So there's a real interest in pushing forward with some early work that was done on marketing Metchosin farm products, working with Tourism Vancouver Island, by BC, for example, to come up with a marketing campaign. You'll see there's an asterisk there because additional funding is required. However, there's quite a lot of funding out there right now. So if the community can come together and determine what organization can lead an action like this, I believe that there would be an easy win right off the bat to do some of this work. There was also a recognition of the important role that post-production processing, such as meat processing, has had on the Metchosin farming community and the desire to continue to support that, and also look at, for example, the South Island food hubs, opportunities to, again, look at how processing can be happening not necessarily just on the farm, but in a collaborative manner as well. There's an interest and opportunity to showcase the cultural food history of the community. So the Sianu First Nation was provided copies of the agricultural plan in a draft form and provided some feedback around an interest in also working alongside the farming community to do this. And so I think that could work hand in hand with tourism as well. And so that's listed as a support. And then lastly, and this sort of aligns with the bulk buying cooperative ideas, looking at establishing an equipment or a tool sharing program. We've included some examples of some successful initiatives from other communities in the plan as well. The last goal, goal number 3, is around environmental issues. So looking at sustainability, regenerative farming, climate resilient farming, there's lots of ways to describe what is essentially a way of creating a farm for agricultural production that has a low impact footprint on the environment. So many of these are not necessarily within the scope of what the District of Metchosin can control, however, the district can support. And so the first one is looking at supporting farming practices that are sustainable, such as the protection of ecosystem services on farms and a low carbon agricultural sector. Fortunately, there's a big push right now by provincial organizations such as Investment Agriculture Foundation, and so there's quite a lot of funding out there for farmers who would like to employ some of these techniques. Secondly is to look at the agricultural sector and really involve them when looking at emergency preparedness planning, but also emergency response. Again, there's some funding out there right now through Investment Agriculture Foundation to create agricultural emergency plans for local governments. And so I think this is an area that's going to continue to receive quite a lot of attention as in the short to long term, which is why we gave it a time frame of ongoing. Third is to support the agricultural sector in managing wildlife conflicts. We heard from a lot of farmers that there's concerns around geese, deer, elk, for example, coyotes, predators such as cougars, and so there's an opportunity to work with all levels of government, the regional district, on up. DUC is Ducks Unlimited Canada. They've done quite a lot of work in some other farming communities too to come up with some really creative solutions. And then lastly, to support biodiversity by managing invasive species and increasing native plant species on farm properties. So there you have the goals and the recommendations. And then we've also included about a dozen indicators to monitor the progress and the process of the plan itself. We really feel, having worked on dozens of agricultural plans now around the province, that they are less likely to sit on a shelf if you give it a report card through which it needs to be evaluated every year. And so I won't read these all off, but they really are indicators as to how the agricultural sector is growing, how it's moving, what direction it's going in, are some of the actions that have been identified in the plan happening on the ground, and if not, why not? What are the barriers that are in place to implementation? Do new parties need to come to the table to overcome some of those barriers, and so on and so forth. So that, with, pardon the pun, is the meat and potatoes of the agricultural area plan. I really wanted to thank the community, and if you'll indulge me for 1 second, Alexander Fletcher was unable to attend tonight, so he asked if I could say a few words with the hat on of the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee. He specifically wanted to thank those who participated and supported the agricultural plan throughout the process, and talk a bit about how he's hoping to develop a plan for bringing the community together to figure out what is the best entity to carry it forward. He specifically wanted to thank Mayor and Council, district staff, Siandu First Nation for receiving the plan and providing comments, Bilston Creek Farms for allowing the use of the barn for the community event, all members of the public who completed the community survey, and farmers who provided input and attended engagement events, and the agricultural committee members, Ministry of Agricultural staff, and anyone else who was involved. So thank you for that, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. It has been quite a comprehensive process, and I know myself, being part of that subcommittee and the Ag Committee, we all learned a lot about our community, the depth of it, and I think you shepherding us through these various things, it was really helpful. It was great to have those surveys as well. They were quite well responded to. Committee, do you have any questions you'd like for Ione? Councillor Schick.
So through you, Councillor Donaldson, Ms. Smith, thank you very much for the great work in the walkthrough. And I have to say just a few things that inspire me or got my attention. We've heard through a number of places the need for post-production processing. So the abattoir is often mentioned, but a juicing commercial kitchen as well. And I really loved the fact that with the actions, you identified the roles that various people would play. And it was comforting that the district and council, district through council was not on everyone.
That's
So
right.
there's a lot of emphasis on the farming community to see some of this through. And the last slide in terms of monitoring and evaluation indicators, really well done and a great point in terms of not having this just sit on the shelf. The idea that really inspires me is creating access opportunities for foodland production from new entrants. And the young agrarians are mentioned in the report as well. And I think that would be a wonderful endeavor for us all to see if we can forward. I'm aware of one property that has currently some engagement with 2 young farmers through young agrarians, but I think there's bound to be more as well. And I worked a number of years ago with Robin Tunnicliffe to write an article on the opportunities that YA presented, and especially the fact that they have lease agreements as well.
That's right.
So yeah, that's something. Sorry, I'm not asking a question. I'm sorry,
okay.
I'm making a statement. But again, yeah, that was something that really inspired me, and it would be neat to find those opportunities here.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for the great work.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Thanks very much for a very comprehensive report. Just wondered in the list of action items and things to do, what do you see as being sort of a couple that would be kind of the top priorities for the district and the farming group to begin with?
So in terms of the district's role as a leader. I really think having those updates to the official community plan and the zoning bylaw, things that are really within your wheelhouse, that can quickly and fairly simply align with some of the other initiatives that are happening, for example, at the provincial level through the new ALR use regulations, would be something that I would really recommend happen fairly swiftly. And then for the farming community, I think figuring out who's going to hold this and move forward and carry the ball. I think the answer is out there, and I don't think it will take them very long to sort out, and I know some of those conversations are already ongoing. And then once that's determined, working on that marketing opportunity, there's a lot of people within a very short distance from Metchosin that would love to buy Metchosin products if they could not necessarily have to drive and circle the community and purchase at 6 different stands. So if there was a way to sort of collectively and collaboratively, cohesively pull those products together and bring them that short distance away to where people live, I think would really make a huge difference on the bottom line for a lot of these farms. Market truck. There you go.
That was one of the ideas, actually. Yeah, that was one of the things, like food truck that only set up your shop in a parking lot somewhere. Who knows? But there's already been some ideas just going on email just in this last few days, last week.
Great.
So the committee themselves are chomping at the bit, so to speak. So there's some interest. Mary Lou, Councillor Gray?
Yeah, thank you very much for this report, very comprehensive, but then I thought it was really so congratulations. One thing with the vision statement is really what this helps us do is it helps us not only contribute to climate change resilience, but resilience as a community, as a rural community. And that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in developing a plan for our future, what we can do in 5 and 10 and 25 years. One of the things that I was hoping that would come out of this is the number of farms that we have in Metchosin, and it seems like it's a little bit of a moving target. So there's 330 parcels of land within the ALR, estimated from the from taxes about 145 farms. I suspect there's more within that as well. Did you have any comment regarding those metrics?
Yes, thank you. And so that goes back to that recommendation around needing a more complete data set as to what's going on. Because you touched on another data set that we pulled from, which was BC Assessment, farm tax status. And as you noted, it's likely incomplete because there's likely people out there producing food that just haven't, or producing agricultural products that haven't applied for farm tax status. So what we're hoping and what we've put in the plan is we've recommended that the farming community have an annual or biannual survey that goes out and collects this information, and then through GIS or other database, mapping databases can really map it and then see what are the trends and see how things move along over time. The Provincial Agricultural Land Use Inventory tries to do that, but they don't have the funding to revisit every community on a very frequent basis. They've only done Metro Vancouver 3 times. So it really comes down to the ability of the farming community to start tracking the information when it comes to more rural, small communities such as Metchosin.
Okay. And through the chair, the other comment that I had was, we, as a council, of course, we can work on the OCP amendments and the zoning bylaws, but I think also we could look to grants for the third point that you mentioned, who is going to carry the ball. And what we know about farmers is they're busy all year except for those 2 weeks at Christmas. And they seem to be busy. Trying to get them together for a forum is very, very difficult because they're all so busy. So I think we can keep our eyes out for grants. Now with this agricultural plan, we'll be able to include it in our grant applications for a coordinator to help move the ticket, and also someone who could assemble that yearly report card. How well we are doing towards these goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Green?
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen, for the presentation and for a really comprehensive report. I'm I have a whack of questions.
Okay.
But maybe I could just, and we'll talk about some of them as a group here, but I was wondering about whether you developed a list of farmers as a result of this exercise, and how was it, I understand surveys were done, but were the farmers providing information freely to one another on the list to say, well, this is what I'm doing and how we're working?
Yeah, so through the survey, we did, and that was an optional field. If people wanted to leave their contact information, we couldn't require it. But we did receive quite a long list of folks who self-identified as producers. And so we did share that with the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee so that they could, because the question was, if you're interested in learning more about the plan as it goes forward, please leave your contact. So that information, has been shared with the community.
Great. It seems to be that's one of the answers to the data problem. If we actually have a list, it's going to be a limited number of people. Create a list, and then we can go directly to people and talk to them about what's going on. The other thing that I guess I was curious about, it's already been mentioned, but maybe I have a different angle on it, and that's the plan's been brought forward tonight for us to recommend adoption to council. And I take from that then the district would own the plan. But most of the work is being done by farmers who are not related to the district, except they happen to live here. So I'm curious about the accountability for implementing the plan and how that actually works. So we might have a few things that we could do. But as I say, a whole lot of it is somebody else's job. And are we expected, is the district then expected to go out there and drive the farmers forward and ask what they've been doing and how come they haven't done it yet and all that sort of thing? Who's accountable for the results or getting the plan actually happening?
So through the chair, so it's not a statutory document. So it doesn't become a regulation. It doesn't become something with necessarily that kind of teeth to it, or a bylaw necessarily. However, by adopting the plan itself, it's a strong indication of endorsement, and it's on record that the community is supportive of the goals and the recommendations within the plan, but it's not anticipated that it would be council's responsibility to ensure each recommendation be implemented within the timeline, specifically those that are not considered to be led by council. However, those that are to be led by council, the idea would be that there would be accountability and interest in making sure that those move forward by council in a leadership role.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate your work in this in the presentation.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Okay, so our next presenter is Leonora Lee, is our auditor from KPMG with a draft consolidated financial statement.
Good evening. Thanks for having me at your meeting tonight. I just wanted to spend a few moments to share the results of our audit as well as some highlights from the financial statements prior to acceptance for the fiscal 2023 year. We have completed our audit, and the only matters that are outstanding at this time include discussion with council and acceptance of the financial statements. These begin on page 25 of your package tonight. As drafted, the auditor's report is a clean and unqualified audit opinion, and so that indicates that there's no material errors within them, and they do present fairly based on the accounting standards that local governments are required to follow here in Canada. We applied a materiality level of 200,000 in performing our audit, and that represents a measure of the error threshold that may exist within them prior to having an impact on our auditor's report. So we have not detected any uncorrected differences that are in excess of those values. On page 25, you'll see the statement of financial position. These financial results are the consolidated results of both the district and its 7% share, ownership share in West Shore Parks and Recreation. You'll see that the total net financial assets were $18.9 million at the end of December 2023. So that represents the amount of cash and cash equivalents or assets that can be converted into cash, minus all of the obligations or expenditures that are required to be paid in cash. The balance of that value is held in things such as reserves, both operating and capital reserves, for long-term investment of the district. The district also had 36 million of capital assets at the end of the year. That represents the net book value, so the unappreciated or unamortized value of capital assets owned by the district. The accumulated surplus at the end of the year was 55 million, and that represents a total of both capital assets as well as reserves on hand. In terms of some of the highlights that have occurred in 2023, in March of 2023, the Growing Communities Fund grant from the province of BC was received, and for the district that amounted to 2.4 million. So that resulted in an increase in cash and cash equivalents because it's unspent at the end of the year, and it also resulted in revenue in the 2023 fiscal year. There was also some activity with the renovation of the school, and at the end of the year there was a grant application and grant amounts owing for costs that had been incurred. That was about 800,000 at the end of the year. In terms of liabilities or amounts owing by the district, there were some grants that had been collected but not yet fully expended at the end of 2023. So those will be brought into income in 2024 or once the funds have been fully expended. One of the new liabilities this year was called asset retirement obligations. That is 280,000. That represents the estimated cost of future remediation that will take place when buildings primarily are taken out of service, and predominantly that value represents the estimated cost of lead remediation. So as the district incurs the cost, that liability will decrease over time. For capital assets, as mentioned, the school site had a number of renovations. There was 3 main sections of roads that had some work attached and patching attached to it that resulted in an increase. Overall, about 1.8 million of additions and 1.5 million of amortization expense. The statement of operations, the next page, shows the revenues and expenses for the year and an annual surplus of 4.6 million. Again, that annual surplus includes 2.4 million of Growing Communities Fund that has not yet been spent at the end of the year, and that's been placed into reserve. That was the largest changing factor in revenues and expenses in 2023. The rest of the revenues and expenses are fairly stable, as well as annual surplus excluding that amount. On the revenue front, a couple of other items that were reflected in 2023 include an increase in interest income. As interest rates increased, so did the district's earnings on its reserve funds, and so that resulted in about 600,000 of additional revenue. There was also revenue and expense of the same amount for services provided for wildfire response. More than last year, and you'll see that in other revenue, a total of 744,000 compared to 200,000 last year. On the expenses front, nothing particularly unusual or one-time. The district staff under the collective agreement have a step increase each year, and so that was incorporated into salaries and benefits. There is continuing costs with the policing agreement that is reflected as a full year of costs in 2023. Again, I mentioned the wildfire response also had a flow through of expenses that increased expenses this year. And lastly, there was a number of grants that were received, and as the district did the work required of the grant, it had expenses that were reflected in 2023 as well. The last item I wanted to mention and draw your attention to is on page 40 of your package. And this shows the accumulated surplus of the district. So it shows the various reserve funds that are in place, as well as both operating and equity and capital assets. So of the total 55 million at the end of the year, the majority of that is already placed into reserve and set aside for things such as capital replacement reserves, renovations to various buildings as they reach the end of their useful life. There's also a number of operating reserves. So that includes things such as tax stabilization, the climate action grants that have been received, as well as some reserves for policing phase-in as those costs increase over time. So you'll see that most of the accumulated surplus has been spoken for in these financial statements, that the unrestricted or the actual operating funds that haven't already been put into a reserve is about 1.7 million. So that amount decreased a little bit from a year-over-year basis, and it's primarily from investing in the district, placing money into other reserves, and that represents about 20% of annual expenses. So that's really your true contingency. If there were something to go awry with revenues, you'd have about 2 to 3 months in the unrestricted operating reserve to adjust and adapt to the needs at hand. Those were the highlights of the statements that I wanted to touch on. Wanted to express our appreciation to staff for all of the assistance in conducting the audit. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Really, any questions? Very good.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee, for your presentation and for the audit, and to your colleagues as well. At the very beginning, you mentioned that this was a clean and unqualified audit. I was wondering if you could just expand on that for the residents that are here this evening and for my colleagues at the table.
Sure. At the conclusion of our audit, we prepare an audit opinion, and it indicates whether or not these financial statements are in accordance with, do they comply with the rules that the local governments are required to follow, or are there any errors that have not already been adjusted for within them. So a clean and unqualified opinion is the ideal position that you want as an organization, and it indicates that there's no uncorrected differences that would have a significant impact on the decision making or to any of the users and readers of the statements.
Okay, thank you. And a second question?
Yeah.
Regarding our reserves, what is your position or your opinion regarding, are they where they should be, or should we be enhancing them and readjusting them at the end of the budgeting season, or what is your suggestions for reserves?
Yeah, for reserves, I would say, it very much depends on the view of council and what you want to do and what your position is on, are you comfortable taking on debt if you need to? If you had no reserves to draw upon, if there was a large unexpected capital or operating draw, you would need to take on debt. So that would be an important factor in determining the level of reserves. The more reserves, the less likely you require debt. The less reserves, the more potentially you could draw on debt for large unexpected activities. And then I think the other piece that goes alongside is, as part of your financial planning process, there's a very rigorous process in place to time out, when does your capital require replacement, and how is that going to be funded? Is it going to be from savings that you put into reserves each year, or is it going to be all at that particular time? So I think the financial planning process is also a good opportunity to look at how future large expenditures and even day-to-day will be funded, and how that compares to the level of reserves on hand.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's great. Did you have a question? Anybody else? Councillor Shaken.
Just, thank you. I just want to follow up on Mayor Little's question. And Ms. Lee, is it fair to say, through the work that you've done, that our accounting and overall financial practices are sound, and that council and the community should have confidence in them? Is that a fair statement?
Yep, the scope of our work is to provide an opinion on the accuracy of these statements, and there's no inaccurate values that we believe would have a material impact on yourselves as readers or any other member of public reading the statements. There always are opportunities for improvement, which we've shared with management, and they're dedicated to implementing those, but happy with the end result of these financial statements.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next part of our agenda is the 2024 grant and aid presentations. We have 5 minutes for each speaker. And the first group that is on our list is the Wanahiki Lacrosse Association.
Hello, my name is Jessica Lejeune and I'm with the Wanahiki Lacrosse Association. I'd like to thank Mayor Little and the Council for welcoming me this evening to be able to speak about the grant and aid request. I myself am not a resident of Metchosin, but I have been a kindergarten teacher at Westmont Montessori School for 14 years, and I understand the uniqueness of Metchosin, appreciate the beauty of the land, and the true specialness of the community members that we have around us today. We are a non-profit youth sports association. We offer spring box lacrosse and fall field lacrosse to youth, boys and girls aged 5 to 17 years old in the West Shore. We have now 400 plus registered players for our 2024 box lacrosse season. We had 220 players in our fall field lacrosse last season. Our volunteer coaches and managers average 75 plus hours per session direct contact with youth in the West Shore. Our organization is dedicated to promoting and developing the sport of lacrosse in the community, providing valuable recreational opportunities for youth, and fostering a sense of teamwork, discipline, and sportsmanship. We have approximately 40 children that are residents of Metchosin that are registered within our association. We are requesting funding from the District of Metchosin to help offset some of the costs of operations not paid for by registration fees. As our association continues to grow, we have costs this season that are not covered by registration, such as jerseys, goaltender gear, and items that are lent out to players and then returned to us at the end of the season. We need to purchase more jerseys this season to cover all of our players, which is approximately $2,000 cost. We also have 22 teams this year, and each team has a set of goalie gear for the youth protection, and some of it's starting to show wear and tear that is over 5 years old. As a safety precaution, it needs to be replaced. We need to purchase flags, sticks, chest protectors, leg pads, and pants, approximately $2,500 cost to our association. We also cover fees for certified mandatory referee training, which is $4,500 per calendar year, and volunteer lacrosse training for coaches that covers $5,000 per calendar year. We also host 6 or more community try lacrosse for free events, and the facility rentals are direct cost to our association. Our association's mandate is to include all youth in our catchment area to teach the skills and the rules of lacrosse. We pride ourselves in bringing local youth together, fostering the love for Canada's national summer sport, the fastest game on 2 feet, promoting the benefits of physical activity, helping them make friends, and teaching lifelong teamwork skills. We are currently making great efforts to grow the game of female-only box and field lacrosse too, which is really big right now, inclusion of women in sport. In 2023, we trained 17 new coaches and 9 referees for the female-specific rules, which was a cost of $2,600 to our association. We have seen significant growth and 171% increase in female registrations. We are passionate volunteers that try to lead more lacrosse for free events per team, and we hope to increase the frequency of these events to expose our reach to as many girls in the West Shore as possible. One project we're really excited about this year is we have booked to host a BC Sixes female tournament. So Six is a brand new version of lacrosse where it's box lacrosse, but it's played on a field. It will be the new featured 2028 Olympic sport, and it's the fastest growing NCAA sport in North America. Many of our players also attend the Field Lacrosse Academy at Royal Bay, the Boys Academy, and the Female Only Academy, and it's one of the biggest in BC. They are also hopeful for university scholarships and all the efforts we try to help the athletes reach their goals. If you have any questions through the chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was quite impressed with your report, the fact that there was so much passion with your volunteer group, the parents, and having been in 2 different youth groups myself, organizations, that's kind of where it starts, and to foster the love of sport or any kind of youth movement where children are included and they get that sense of belonging and build some confidence and friends. I applaud you all for that. And thank you for explaining what Sixes is, because I was kind of curious.
Brand new sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had no idea there was a lacrosse academy in the school, so this is good news as well. Any questions from the committee? Mary?
Thanks, Jessica, for your presentation and your application. So you mentioned that you have 171% increase in girl participation. What does that amount to? How many girls?
We had 38 registered in the box lacrosse season for this year, and it was up from 14 players last year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And then do they play mixed teams, or they're girls only teams?
They're girls only
Girls
team, and they,
teams?
out of their own pocket, pay for travel to go to the mainland every other weekend.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, we've traveled to Nanaimo. There's a huge women's lacrosse development in Nanaimo. It's absolutely exploding up there. So we go to Nanaimo one weekend and then the mainland the other weekend.
Wow, that's costly. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next group will be the Wanakeuka Performing Arts Center Society, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Council, nice to see you again. Judith Collington, President of the Wanakeuka Performing Arts Centre Society, and as you all know, we are the group working to build a community-oriented arts and culture centre in the West Shore area. And thank you for your very generous contribution last year of $300. As you know, we put that towards our accessibility and inclusion study, and I had the opportunity to present some of the outcomes to you just recently. Our work for this year is focusing in 3 important areas. One is with the help of the Intermunicipal Committee and your representative, Councillor Abb. We're working to determine and secure the best location, looking at funding models, looking at operating models, and also looking at kind of who the building partners would be as a part of that project. Our second major focus is outreach to the arts community. So we're working to kind of really systematically reach out to all of the arts and cultural groups across the region, really learning more about, specifically for each of them, they're interested in participating in the centre. Our third focus is outreach to the public, and as a part of our work this year, we're going to be doing joining a series of events in all of the communities around the West Shore, including, of course, Machosen. So we're going to be collaborating with local artists to try and shine a spotlight on their work, because there's so much talent in this region. It's fabulous. That means, of course, that our workload is expanding. Our board members put in over 500 hours of volunteer work last year, and we know that we're going to be doing that and more again this year. So to address some of that, we are hiring, in fact we have actually already hired a part-time outreach coordinator, fabulous young woman. We've submitted an application to Victoria Foundation to cover the bulk of the funding of hiring her, waiting on hearing that. But we also submitted grant and aid requests to all of the West Shore municipalities, and I'm pleased to say that to date we have confirmed funding from Langford, View Royal, Colwood and Highlands for a total of $6,300, and that's what's enabled us to get this young woman started. So our request to Machosen for $300 is a small but important part of that, and we would be absolutely delighted and very appreciative if you were able to support us again this year. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I just have one question. I did read somewhere in your package about working with CRD Arts. Have we been able to get grants from them as well?
We can't get funds directly through CRD Arts because what they fund is sort of, performances and activities, and mostly that's not the kind of work that we're doing, so we don't qualify.
Okay.
But we keep looking to see if there's opportunities out there. We have also put in an application to the BC Gaming to support some of the outreach events that we're doing. So we're trying to kind of understand and access the appropriate grants where we can.
Okay. Thank you. Committee, anyone have questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, it's good to see you. Thank you. Okay, so the Royal Canadian Legion was not able to come this evening due to medical issue. So I'd like to ask for the South Island Farmers Institute, Katie Underwood, please.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here on this beautiful evening. I'm here representing the South Island Farmers Institute. I'm one of the founding members. And what makes the South Island Farmers Institute and Farmers Institutes in general really special is we are not a charity, we're not a nonprofit, but we're actually an organization that is able to speak directly to the Ministry of Agriculture and ask for things that we particularly need in order to be able to grow food for our community. And so the South Island Farmers Institute was established on July 16th of 2023. So far we have 80 members, and they span from anywhere from North Saanich out to Souk. We even have a couple members in Nanaimo that really wanted to join us. And so one of the big things that our members advocated for and told us that they wanted was farmer education. And so what we really have found throughout our community is that there are so many fantastic producers that know so much. And there's a lot of people that have been growing for quite some time and are so knowledgeable and have knowledge to be able to pass on to new and emerging farmers like myself. And so we were graciously passed the baton from CR Fair, the Capital Regional Food Initiatives Roundtable, to host Farmer to Farmer once again on the South Island, which is an annual conference that brings together producers from all aspects to share, learn together, network with one another. And what makes us really excited about hosting Farmer to Farmer, which we had this past February, is that it now involves a whole week. We can't fit everything in one day, so what we do is we have one big conference day, and then we travel out and do field trips at different farms. And so we were really fortunate to be able to host one at Uminami Farm in Metchosin this year. And we talked about small-scale machine maintenance there. We did one about ponds and dugouts in North Saanich, grafting in Central Saanich, and they're really scattered around. And we recognize that there's a great deal of talent, farmers out in the West Shore, and so we really would appreciate some funding to be able to continue to support those producers out in Metchosin, if that means either bringing some folks from the peninsula out to the West Shore or vice versa, and supporting those that want to be able to come in perhaps for the conference day. It just really helps people get together, create friendships, have conversations right away. It's an astonishing group of people. We've gained so much traction, and with the support of council, community, and just private funding too, it's been really fantastic. So we want to keep running with the ball. We want to keep celebrating West Shore producers. There's so much land here, there's so much potential, so we really want to celebrate that and celebrate the producers that are doing great things out here. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Probably skipped over a few things.
Thanks, Katie. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the conference. There was a lot of work that went into that. I did report back to council about that. I spoke just briefly on our ag plan, but there were a lot of great breakout sessions in the main convention hall. There was a lot of really interesting resources there for farmers. And the Sustainer series, which you didn't actually mention, a couple times came to Metchosin, or Metchosin farmers went to Saanich. So it's nice to see that it's not just one community, it is truly South Island. And I spoke a couple of times to some of the people from Up Island, so it's, there are no borders. We do have a region of food to grow and to promote, this healthy way of living. So I appreciate you coming tonight and being available. Anybody at the table at the committee like to have a question or two?
Just, Councillor Donaldson, it sounds like you can answer this question, but when is the conference? What time of year is it? And where is the day one for that?
So
typically?
the day conference we have held at the Saanich Fairgrounds. They graciously offer us a pretty good deal on the day. We're hoping to host it January 23rd this year. And please come. Please, everybody, please come.
Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the field trips. It was on my calendar, but all the moving parts didn't allow for it. But perhaps next year, and if not, then certainly volunteer in some part of it. So it was great, and your group is doing. There's a lot of energy, but there's like you say, your resources are limited. So good for you for what you've accomplished in a short period of time, and not quite at your first year yet. So.
I know, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Any other questions from the committee? No? Okay. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Okay, so could I ask somebody from Wildwise, please, to present? Welcome.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Molly Cameron. I am the president of Wildwise. As you know, Wildwise is an educational society that promotes peaceful coexistence with wildlife through knowledge and understanding. Wild animals are an integral part of our community's biodiversity and ecosystem health. One of our main initiatives is using signage, conversations, and educational materials like brochures to provide useful information to residents that can assist them in mitigating human-wildlife conflicts with predators like wolves, cougars, and bears through proper attract and securement, as well as using those materials to bring attention to well-used wildlife crossing areas on busy roads to avoid vehicle collisions and wildlife fatalities. Additionally, we do community and school presentations about our local wildlife to inspire respect and understanding. We assist with marine mammal rescue through transportation of orphaned, sick, or injured harbor seals and molting elephant seals that require assistance to protect them from public interference. Though our focus may seem catered to predators and marine mammals, we provide education and information about all of our wild neighbors. We are proud to maintain a working relationship with the BC Conservation Officer Service to ensure that education is the first step in addressing conflicts to avoid potential issues escalating and ultimately animals losing their lives. We all have a role to play in coexistence, and Wildwise is happy to be a voice for animals that are unable to speak for themselves. Animals incapable of advising the public that they are unable to distinguish between natural and non-natural foods, and that without providing opportunities to access non-natural food sources, we contribute to the safety and longevity of those animals. Wildwise holds the understanding that not everybody understands how they may impact wildlife, and oftentimes people move to the community without any prior experiences with wildlife, meaning education is one of the keys to coexistence. We are asking for your financial assistance today as a completely volunteer-run organization to assist with the cost of educational materials used to serve the community. We would be unable to do the meaningful work that we are so passionate about without the support of municipalities we serve. We are immensely grateful for your consideration and aspire to continue serving the Metchosin community and all of its wild inhabitants. Any questions?
Thank you. Your education campaign is definitely being effective, I think, in our community. As fewer and fewer people are, I think it's self-regulated now. If somebody leaves a garbage out, they're told pretty quick by the neighbors not to do that with bears and, well, in my neighborhood it seems to be ravens. For the ones that aren't contained as well, but certainly education is helpful, and I think we're going to be speaking with you again in the near future, but you did do a presentation slideshow, which was also very informative, so thank you for coming this evening. Is there anyone on the committee that have any questions for Ms. Cameron?
Thank you.
Mayor Little?
Oh, just a quick question. When I think I was talking to Councillor Shukin about this, as you go into Souk, there is a sign that is in the shape of a bear saying, "Welcome to Bear Country," or something like that. Did you have a part in playing with that? I think there was another one on the Saanich Peninsula that said, "Welcome to Bear and Cougar Country. If you're uncomfortable with this, the next ferry leaves in 2 hours," or something like that.
The Saanich Peninsula sign was not us, but the main crossing sign or the main sign in Souk was facilitated by Wildwise. Yes.
Okay.
We would love to see more permanent signage in communities.
We might want to think about that for Metchosin.
So I do have one question. So I do see signs out on different boulevards and that when there has been a sighting, just to bring awareness to neighbors. Do you put signage anywhere on, say, the Galpin Goose Trail as a linear trail that goes through several communities in the West Shore?
We don't have permission to have materials on CRD designated trails or parks.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do coordinate with them if there is an issue. We advise them, and then whatever they do with that information from there is within their jurisdiction.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. It was a question posed to me just recently.
Yeah. People are welcome to contact us, and we can forward that along to CRD, no problem.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Great. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, and we do have some written submissions from some other individuals. Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society of Greater Victoria, which is now called NEED 2. It's the Suicide Prevention, Education and Support for young people. That's what this particular application is for. Access West Shore Society did send in, we have a pink here somewhere, which is also in your package. Oh, here it is. I'll read that for them. It's very short. They've now registered as a society and changed their name, so they do have some in their package. It does say about expenses for setting up a website, etc. But what they're asking for here is a grant for $250, which would be applied towards 3 to 4 music in the park events in the summer or autumn. It eliminates barriers allowing people with disabilities and seniors to attend. Access West Shore Society, which is their new name, will cover accessible transportation such as a handy dart, bus pass, or accessible taxis within reasonable kilometers so that people can attend these community events. We will also give each person who has RSVP $15 each to be able to get a reimbursement for lunch, specifically because many of them do have dietary restrictions. It also helps them to purchase a lunch from a charity, a Legion, or a food truck that is on site at some of these places. These events have been very popular in the past 5 years and allows people with disabilities and seniors to be able to connect with other community members, not feel isolated, and enjoy the physical and mental health benefits of listening to great music. We also hope to be able to have one of our music events at the Metchosin Community House, but this has not yet been confirmed. And this was written to us by Marnie Essery, who is the president of the Access West Shore Society. Another organization, Mental Health Society of Greater Victoria, is applying for a grant. Prince Edward branch of the Royal Canadian Legion, Reimagine West Shore Community Society, and that's all we have. Any further comments from the committee on the grant and aid application? This will come together again at the June 3rd meeting, I think, or early June, for final decisions. So thank you to everybody who did apply. This point of the meeting is for public participation. If there's anyone in the community that would like to speak, please state your name and the street in which you live. Go ahead.
Patty Whitehouse, Rocky Point Road. I want to speak strongly in favor of providing a grant and aid to the NEED 2 Suicide Prevention Society. For many years, from the time that I moved to Metchosin and also when I was in Highlands, NEED 2 came to councils and gave a personal presentation. That hasn't happened for several years. So council members may not know about or may need to be reminded of the importance of the work that this organization does. I was a volunteer with its predecessor, the NEED Crisis Line, for a number of years, a long time ago, and have followed the succession. The youth suicide is a serious issue everywhere, including in our region. The NEED 2 Society does a number of things to address that concern. They provide education in schools so that staff and the youth at risk peers know how to recognize the signs that somebody is needing help and approach them in a way that can encourage them to look for help. They provide the actual training in school workshops, and they also provide the crisis support chat line where anybody who recognizes it or wants to, not necessarily seek help, but to seek support is able to do that at no charge and with a caring, supportive person to listen to them. It's an important service. It's a an effective organization, and I hope you will support it.
Thank you very much for that background. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
Thank you. Brent Donaldson, Chalice Court. I won't repeat what Patty said, but I support her. I know those folks have come to council many times over the years, and certainly I think we need to support our youth that have crisis. I know the amount hasn't changed over the years. The 5,000 doesn't go very far, but certainly it's nice when grassroots organizations come here. I'd certainly like to see them, it's not going to happen tonight, but certainly get some token of our recognition and a funding point of view. I know the farmer, I did that a few years ago, Farmer to Farmer. I was a speaker at that. Our kids didn't play lacrosse, but they played soccer involved with scouting. So certainly the youth organizations, I know there's not a lot of money to go around, but certainly it'd be nice to see everyone that applied that have a worthy case that they do receive some funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes on page 19.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Just a question, just to clarify for people in the audience.
Yes.
We'll make decisions on the grant and aid program at what meeting?
It's in June, early June. I don't
Council
have the
meeting in
date.
June. Great,
Yes.
thank you.
It'll be at the council meeting, yes.
And I think we talked earlier this year about setting up actual criteria that we'd be using the grant and aid. I know we're late this year for doing that, but I look forward to helping help out with that, or others can, just to get something in place. So next year we've got criteria to match a grant. And I appreciate the public participation tonight, which gave us a few hints.
Yes, I have been working on that behind the scenes, and it will be available for us to discuss probably in the fall, so that we will have it in place for the next season.
Thanks much.
I thought you also sent out an email about some criteria.
That's just a guideline. That is not formal because we don't have that as a policy.
But
So those are just
an informal guideline to use.
Yeah, it's just a thought process. So in my research that I've done thus far, I've checked out a variety of different communities throughout the Greater Victoria region, the CRD, as well as Up Island, Nanaimo, Merritt, places that sort of reflected a lot of what I also spoke to my predecessor, which was Councillor McKinnon last year, and so just looking at that and having attended many budget meetings and grant and aid meetings, understanding the values of our community. So I'll be putting all of those together for us to have a more fulsome discussion in the future for sure. So we actually have something more solid. And there was lots of information out there, so we don't have to totally reinvent the wheel, but certainly to customize it to suit our community. Councillor?
Well, what is going to be the plan this year for deciding the amounts? Like, it's difficult to discuss all that in the middle of a meeting, so I know in the past, there's been, people have just sent in what they think, and then the majority is.
Mm-hmm. So the total, I think, this year is $7,720 is being asked of us. So things to consider is, who, like you see on the application form where it says how many people in the Chosen are benefited from this. Is it an organization here in Metchosin? In many cases, it's not. As the last two speakers in participation said, we leave our community for some of these services that we also benefit from. So those are things to consider, and do they fall into things like our OCP, the values of our community, how many times have they come back and asked year after year, that sort of thing, or are we duplicating services? So in some cases, these organizations have benefited from having use of our school for free. And so those are kind of like in-kind things that we have operated on in this past year especially. So those are sort of some things that we can consider.
Well, I realize that, but I just want to know how exactly we're going to come to the dollar amount. Are we each going to decide on our own and then send it in to you and then bring it up at the meeting, or how exactly are we going to come to the final decisions on who gets what?
Yes, we will be discussing that at the next meeting. We can do it like we did last year and prorate it, having a high and a low. That's really up to the committee, because we don't have a policy in place.
I wasn't particularly happy how it ended last year with us discussing it at the table, because the person at the very end got sort of the most amount of what was left over, and it could have been the opposite. The way we had done it last term, which I think was fine, and we could bring it in a transparent way out at the meeting, was everybody send you a spreadsheet with each of these organizations and what, according to the criteria that you've outlined, what you'd like to award to them, and then you take that and then average them.
Yeah, I
So
can
that we
summarize that and present it.
Yeah, I think that would save time, and that would be probably the most fair and equitable way. Anyways, that's my opinion.
I would agree.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good. As long as everybody agrees with that, we can have a discussion on it. Yeah, I can summarize. Okay. Okay, so adoption of the minutes for the special finance meeting, finance committee meeting, which would be the budget meeting of April 4th on page 19.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Mayor Little. Question, Councillor Gray?
I just want to make a clarification on public input. You'll see Nicole Shukin what's recorded is that the City of Langford and Sooke may not include policing costs in their residential tax rates. They do, in fact. And so if one wants to compare our tax increase to Sooke and Langford, then you would use the numbers of 7.1 plus the 2.7 to 9.8 is our tax increase if you want to compare across those other districts.
Oh, I see on page 20. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And on page 23, the Finance Committee meeting of April 8th, 2024.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Gray. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and so we have no receipt of minutes, no business arising. Reports on page 27, the chosen agricultural plan. Okay, so we have any discussion on this from the committee? We've had the presentation from Upland Consulting. If not, I'd like to call the question, or not the question, mover for this.
I just did have a comment. I mean, I think it's a very impressive report, and I appreciated Aaron's presentation, right? And thanks to the Agricultural Advisory Select Committee, Aaron Smith and the team at Upland Agriculture Consulting. But I don't feel prepared to approve the plan this evening. First, a comment about the process. I mean, as everybody around the table knows, we were scheduled to see a draft plan in January, but that never occurred. So we've got a final document here before us, but we haven't had the chance to discuss it amongst ourselves. And I don't know if, I think maybe we should do that tonight, and the issues within the document. It's my understanding that staff are not involved in managing the consulting contract nor guiding the plan development, and we rely on staff to keep us on the straight and narrow. And I see a number of changes are needed to the document, and I also have a number of questions about it. I wonder if others might have the same or other questions themselves.
Okay, so to be clear on the first point, staff was involved with this a great deal because actually it is the district who owned the RFP on this, the whole process. Anytime that the farmers needed or wanted to do something, they had to actually go through and staff to be sure that they were approaching it appropriately. Are you citing that that didn't happen?
Well, I'm wondering, maybe I could tell you about some of my concerns. I get, and it was helpful to hear Ione explain her perspective. I'm not sure what our perspective should be, but if we adopt the plan as written, it seems to me that we are accepting the assertions made in the document. And there are some details which I think we might want to discuss. I'm wondering if we adopt the document, if we're supporting all the bylaw amendments recommended, and quite a number of policy positions that we haven't debated. And if staff have reviewed all those bylaw amendments and policy positions, then we haven't seen a report from them explaining their view about those things. There's also financial commitments that were asked for in the document. They're not precise, but a variety of financial commitments, and I wonder if we approve the document, if we're approving spending the money. We know our staff will reach their limits in terms of workload and probably won't start new things for a few months now. So we're not really able to implement the plan, I think, even if we were to adopt it. So I think it's a phenomenal job done in terms of ideas and direction and recommendations. None of that's bothering me. It's more about who owns it, who's accountable for it, and what do we do with some of the things that we might like to see corrected at this point, or at least discussed.
Any other comments?
Sorry, just one moment. Sorry.
Well, maybe I could ask Mayor Little, do you think the zoning bylaw amendments in Appendix 1 are things that we would pursue, all of them?
I don't know if we pursue all of them. I think they're worth discussing with staff and taking recommendations from our CAO. I'm actually not sure. I mean, we own the document for sure. We paid for it. The district had chosen paid for it. By adopting this plan, does it mean that we agree with all the recommendations? I don't know. Actually, I don't. We adopt the plan. I don't think we do. I'm unsure about that. I'd have to get some guidance from our CAO regarding that, and I'll ask him in a minute. But there is a number of accountabilities here that are not District of Metchosin driven. There's a number of initiatives here that are farmer driven with support from the district and other organizations. Yeah, I think here is a place that we would talk about any of the concerns that you have. I don't think that I don't think there's any other venue for discussing that. So first of all, let's ask our chief administrative officer through the chair.
Yes, that would be good.
If we can have a comment, if we adopt the plan as is, does that mean that we adopt the recommendations? Mr. Pyatt?
Yes, please.
Maybe I could clarify that. I'm thinking many times we receive documents because we're not adopting them, or receive minutes and we say we're receiving them, they'll be adopted elsewhere because we're not the body to do that. In this case, there's a lot of material in here, and I'm not sure that council would agree with all of it, so that's why I'm wondering.
Yeah, so through the chair, it's not a statutory document, and therefore the plan has been submitted as a final draft. And so if council accepted the plan as presented with language in the resolution, that council take the plan and come back with appropriate responses to the various items in the plan, we could do that. Thanks.
That's a big help for me. I guess maybe I can give you a simple example. with the very first sentence, the District of Metchosin is located in the southernmost tip of Vancouver Island on the unceded territory of the Sienna First Nation. So we're on the territory of the Sienna First Nation, Songhees, and Suk. So things like that, I think it would just be a point of making some of those edits to make sure that we are accurate and not, we're playing a good role. There's lots of language about reconciliation in the document, or about working together with Sienna, but I think we want to recognize the territory that we're on. But I don't know if it's your desire tonight to go through the document line by line and look at those things, or how to tackle it. To the mayor's point, it's why I asked Iona about the question about, we have a thin role here in terms of some of the actions, and much is being to be done by other people. But if we adopt it, then it seems to me we have a responsibility to implement it, or to do something with it beyond looking at it on the shelf. I'll give you an example. The key finding number 2 is about promoting agritourism, but the text reads, there's a disconnect between what potential customers might want and what farmers are currently willing to provide. And the action list suggests developing agritourism strategy. That doesn't make sense to me. If people aren't interested in doing it, why would we be driving them to do it? I have other examples. How do we tackle that question of who is implementing it if it isn't to be us? I have to say, I've just seen the document over the weekend and that, so I don't have the experience that maybe others have who've been working on it.
Councillor Shuka, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Donaldson. In terms of being on the hook for what's in here, if we adopt the plan in practical sense, we're not. Because each of these things, if we go to review, update the OCP, that's a whole process unto itself, and we will learn from that. I think I'd like to have this as a reference, though, to guide some of those discussions. For example, if we were to look at the OCP. And I think from the goals that I see, looking at some of the things that make my eyes go wide, they're sufficiently broad that I'm not concerned about having to be on the hook for big changes. I'm subject to your thoughts, Councillor Donaldson. I'm prepared to adopt the plan today and move to the next step with this.
Yeah, so I see this plan as a guiding document, one that can be worked with between the district, the council, and the advisory select committee, which has more expertise at the table than probably we have at this table, and that's the partnership that we have. And I'm comfortable with what the CAO is saying about not, the level of obligation. If there are some things that need to be improved, perhaps. We hired a company to put this together, who are professionals, and they consulted with both the Agriculture Committee staff and the Agricultural Subcommittee on this. It's gone through numerous times, and I'm not saying that there are no errors. Meryl, did you have a comment to add to that? I saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to address the agritourism comment. At the Agricultural Forum a couple of years ago, it was clear that in the room there was appetite from some farmers that were very interested in agritourism and were relying on agritourism to bring a substantial amount of money into their operations so they could do farming. And then there were other farmers that had zero interest in agritourism. And I actually thought that was the beauty of the Metchosin community, is we're not a cookie cutter. We've got farmers that want to do agritourism, some that are already doing our agritourism, and some who just want to produce leafy green vegetables and fruit. And I think that's the beauty of the community, is we can support whichever one. So it's not that there was zero interested in agritourism. There was just very definite camps that some wanted to promote and have an agritourism farm and others didn't. But what I'm concerned about is I found a couple of errors, and I think they should be corrected since we found them. And hearing that Councillor Gray would like to have some more time for discussion with us along this, perhaps he could send his comments to you, and then some of those questions or some comments and some of my corrections can be made. And then after that, we can come back, and I think it's a good point that Councillor Schuken and the CAO made, that this is not a statutory document. I see this as a tool. It's a tool, and if we decide not to use the tool, it'll sit on the shelf. I prefer it not to be there because I think there's some nuggets in here that will eventually help us stay rural. And that's all of us committed to that in the election. Not many people had any ideas of how we were going to stay rural, but I think this is one of the components and in implementing this plan. I didn't fight hard for $40,000 just to have the plan sit on the shelf. And so I think it'll be great for us to peruse around, find a grant for that coordinator position to help move the needle, move the dial on this. That's what I would recommend anyways, is to gather input on corrections and make those corrections and bring it back.
Okay. Councillor, would you like to make a motion to that effect? Do you agree with that?
No, I mean, I'm just reflecting on what we heard from Mr. Payette. And that seemed to be another route to take, is to accept the document. And then as the staff take it to implement it, they'll come to us and ask us, do we approve this or do we approve that? I think we have to be, though, straight up with our community, that we just don't have a lot of people to focus on this and work through. And like the idea of an OCP, you know, opening the OCP to change it, to do things, or even to bring in a zoning. The list of bylaws that we have now are probably going to take us through the end of the term. So I feel like I want to be honest about what we're doing, have integrity with it, and not say, well, yeah, we'll adopt this, and then say, oh, actually, can't do a lot of it or don't have the resources to. So I'm just wanting to give it the full consideration. I'm not trying to slow it down at all. I'm more just like, how do we actually work with it? So I see, I mean, so that's where I'm at. I could certainly provide some commentary. It's an enormous document. It's got a lot of value here. I'm not knocking it. I'm more trying to figure out where's the place where's our role versus the farmers per se. So for the moment, let me look at my note here.
This can also be implemented into our strategic plan so that each year we can go through part of this and flush out what it is that we need to adapt to the OCP, similarly what we're going to do with the housing as well. We've got till the end of next year for that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'll just give another simple example, which is the changes for the BC assessment. You know, on page 1, and there's a whole lot of information there, and I have to say I don't understand it. So it's hard for me to approve it when I don't understand just what exactly will the BC farm taxes minimum thresholds being higher do. And it's not that, it's just there's nothing in the report that explains it to us. So it's that kind of thing.
Councillor Ed?
I just wondered, can we not just recommend that the Committee for the Metros and Agriculture Area Plan to Council, period?
For approval?
Well, just to Council.
And then Council, yeah. And then in the meantime, we gather any concerns we have, and maybe we can put them forth then. Councillor Gray, are you suggesting maybe we put those ideas to staff to go through this, or us?
Well, we could do either. I don't have a major suggestion. It was just I was anxious not to tumble forward with approval before we understood what we were up to.
So would you suggest us tabling this and put it to the next meeting? No? The next, we have only, go ahead.
it sounds like there are some corrections and maybe a few revisions or questions. So I wonder if the plan ahead is really to just send those corrections to you. Council's ideas or corrections to you for a subsequent draft. Now, whether that draft goes to council, as Councillor Epp is suggesting, or comes back here, my own sense is I don't believe there's much to gain by meditating too long in the document. I think there's actions that we can begin to push ahead here. So, yeah, I would move that that council submit any edits, corrections, or comments to Councillor Donaldson for a subsequent draft that would be provided to council.
Okay.
So moved.
And a second?
Somebody? Okay.
Okay, there's no seconder. Any other comments? Mary Lou?
I can support the motion, except for that this is the committee that it should come back to. Any substantive discussions should happen at the committee level, and the council should be reserved for adopting bylaws, adopting minutes, receiving minutes. So the discussions should be at the committee level. So if you want to make a motion again for this to come back to this committee, I would support it.
Okay. I would move that that this committee provide its edits, comments, and questions to Councillor Donaldson for a further draft that would come back to the Finance and Agriculture Committee. So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Shuka and seconded by Councillor Gray. Any other comments?
I'll just say thank you.
Okay, call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so then on page 117. Is that right? Very last page. Okay, so just a quick summary of the my councilor's update. Finance, the budget is finished, and we look forward to the quarterly reports. The next budget season is probably going to start a little bit earlier because we're going to be not much shorter and sweeter and succinct. The Great Victoria Public Library, I was actually nominated and voted in as vice chair of their finance committee. And from now until the end of summer, the Finance Committee and the Policy and Planning Committees will meet, and they'll meet throughout the summer, so I have some work ahead of me there. Agriculture Advisory Select Committee. Farmers Market will be opening up on May 12th, which is next Sunday, which is also Mother's Day. I put an article into the news recently about roadside stands. There'll be a follow-up article to that. There was a slight error in there. One of my goals for that was to make sure that people understood the purpose and the value of farm stands, and as we heard in the agricultural plan, there is a place for these little businesses, and so my goal was also to share with the community how to set it up following the regulations of our land use bylaw. So I will put that forward into the next muse. What I was trying to demonstrate with the photos that I put in, I put 3 and 2 were selected, were ones that actually complied with those regulations, and so one was not quite in compliance. So instead of putting just the link next time, I will actually write it out so people understand how to work within that, and it's just pretty simple. So it was more to set people up for success in their little businesses. Wanakee Water, bless you. We had our final water presentation about a week ago here in the chambers. We had a speaker from CRD Water come out and talk to us about the logistics, the costs of piped water, trucked in bulk water, and bulk water stations. So a lot of dialogue. We opened it up to the floor after that presentation. We also had a resident in the community bring their truck that is outfitted with a tank to be able to refill his cistern. So this is one of the options. So we're going to be looking at more of what those sorts of things are. I have a meeting with the commission tomorrow, so I'm hoping to learn more about that and report back. The mayor and I have been working on that a little bit, just to explore what would work best for. There's about 25% of our residents are on wells, and each year those wells are being compromised with climate change, urban development. I got a really upset resident the other day near the bufferlands. There was huge blasts, no mats for those blasts, and concerned about their wells. So it's throughout our community, but these are things that we have to that we're facing in our community because there's no development and there's no BCC plans and costs and stuff like that. So there's a lot of logistics to consider. So I'll continue working on that. West Shore Parks and Recreation. Langford Tennis Club is looking for a new home. They're just under 100 years old. Originally had started on Claude Road. They came and did a presentation, and so they may be one of our new partners down at the rec center. We'll see what happens in the next, by the end of the year. I'm hoping we'll learn more about that. Access West Shore is planning a wheelchair basketball game or demonstration at May 29th at Spencer Middle School from 7 to 8:30. And this is in recognition of Accessibility Awareness Week, which is between May 26th and June 1st. So you're all welcome to come out and watch. And I'm hoping to have firsthand at playing basketball in a wheelchair, which should be more hilarious than it will be achievable, who knows. So with that, there is no other business, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn to the finance meeting, please. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Huh. I'm feeling I need one less and less these days.
Welcome everybody to the council meeting of May 6, 2024. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, for doing the territorial acknowledgement earlier this evening. We have a fairly light agenda before you. With that, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Comments? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Public participation for those 4 people left in the room. Does anybody wish to speak at the microphone? If so, identify yourself and your road. Thank you.
Okay. Hoping I haven't worn out my welcome around here. Kim Hill, 1070 Brookview Drive. Yeah. By the way, I'm wearing this scarf tonight. This is it's a symbol. We've got some fish scales on this side. Here you go. Some bubbles on the other. Just to remind you guys and to reiterate my stubborn intent about keeping the health of Bilston Creek top of mind. I got a feeling there's not too much doubt about that. Anyways, after I was here last, I'm picking up on a subject hoping it's not grown thin on you, but because it's grown old with me, is namely about the management of the water that's coming from Center Mountain, like that big radical development that's happening up there. What's happening with that water and how it's going to be treated when it comes to Minnechosa. There's been let's say a room for improvement about the communication about that situation to the residents. And Mayor Little, thank you very much. The mayor and I had a good meeting Wednesday last week, and we discussed this, and that we both came to agreement about that matter, that there is room for improvement. Now, we discussed some practical ways that this might come about, and perhaps the mayor will be reporting about that later in this meeting. I can't stay around. I've got work on my bench that's waiting for me to attend to. I'll be watching in the webcam though. But you know, whether or not there's any positive feedback about the initiative that we discussed on Wednesday last week, whether or not I really appreciate hearing back about this before Wednesday. Alison and Leduc and I, we've got a meeting with Langford Engineering. The head honcho is up there on Wednesday. It would be nice to be able to present something constructive to them at that time. Yes, you know, this has been an elephant in the room for so long. It's beginning to stink up the neighborhood, you know. Yeah, Anyways, trying to be optimistic about this, keeping a happy face on it. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm devoted. This is proof. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at public participation? Okay, so let's move on to page 3 of the agenda. This is the adoption of the minutes from April 22nd, 2024. Move adoption by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we've got the minutes from receipt of the minutes for the Capital West Accessible Advisory Committee meeting November 22nd.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that's the receipt of the minutes. I did have a mayor's report, a full written report last time. Reports for action on page 15 of your council agenda. So we have, we're looking for a motion for council to approve the consolidated financial statements of the District of Minnechosa. Councillor Donaldson.
Move that council approve the audited consolidated financial statements here ended December 31st, 2023.
This is moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Discussion.
Thanks very much. I take some comfort in the words from Ms. Lee, and should, like what she said earlier about us having confidence in the financial practices of the district. And as I think we all know, Ms. Lee is, or she confirmed my assessment of what she had said. And Ms. Lee's been doing this audit for a number of years now, so I'm very happy to, go with Councillor Donaldson and move adoption.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
If I just offered, she said that the statements are accurate.
Yeah, fair enough.
And,
Yeah.
and didn't talk too much about the practices, because I think she was reflecting on it's our responsibility to decide how big the reserves are, and our responsibility to decide our budget. But I'm in favor of the motion.
Anybody else wish to speak to this motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And reports for information. On page 55 of your council agenda, we have the Capital West Accessibility Advisory Committee Public Engagement Results and Summary. Ms. Hanson, who sits on the committee, is not able to be with us this evening, but she provided some notes here. Would you like me to go through them, or would you? Okay, I'll go through them. Thank you. The committee, the Capital West Accessibility Committee, is moving forward with the accessibility plan, which will have a focus on two aspects required by the Accessible BC Act: employment and service delivery. The committee held two public surveys. Survey 1 focused on types of accessibility engagement. You've got that in your report. And Survey 2, which is accessibility and you. Results will form the basis of questions to explore during the public engagement process. An RFP to hire a consultant for public engagement will be issued in the coming weeks. And the survey results have been placed on the accessibility page of the district website as well. You remember the guidance from, or the mandate from the province was that we have two things: an accessibility plan and a portal. And the portal, I think it's called Accessibility Machosen. I guess I should get that right. I think it's accessible. Does anybody know what it is? It's Accessibility Machosen at machosen.ca. For any comments of people wanting accessibility issues addressed within the accessibility plan. Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding the staff report or the survey results or anything? Go ahead, Councillor Dawson.
I don't have any questions. I really enjoyed reading and comparing with the other communities.
The responses, you mean?
The responses to the survey?
Yeah.
And some of these actually fit in already with some of the plans that they're ongoing, like roadside trails. Except they did say about paving trails. I don't think we'll be doing that anytime soon. However, access to the farmers market was on here, and gravel areas changed to smaller aggregate. Just to make a note there, that's exactly what the farmers market has just done. After a conversation I had last year with their president, I said, this would be great if it was a little bit more accessible. Next thing you know, there's backwards and everything happening, and they changed out their aggregates. So those sorts of things, and then lighting on the building and ramps. We already identified we need to do that. So it's good to see that it's affirmed, and that accessible parking. We need to get those painted lines done, and so it's good to see it in print, and then compare it with, like I say, our urban neighbors who have sidewalks and that. So it's different here in the Chosen, but we certainly can adapt. Visibility, even speaking with the staff, things that they're talking about, just in the buildings themselves and the website, that sort of thing. Caption, what do you call it, closed captioning, and that is something that we can do as well. So, yeah, lots of brainstorming to be had. So this is good to see these results for sure.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
I wondered, is there a process for us to follow up then on these comments and concerns of the public, or is this something we put in our binder? What happens next with it?
What happens next is, so this is in the ballpark of the Capital West Accessibility Advisory Committee. So just as a reminder, that committee is made up of corporate officers, assistant corporate officers from each district or town, and so it's in their court, and they will feed it out to the specific municipalities for action. Some of them are not within our purview, like the community hall, for instance, is not within the District of Metchosin council purview, but is identified as one of the areas that should be improved for accessibility. So the next step is it's still within the committee's hands. They're going to have a consultant do an accessibility plan for the core areas, and then I suspect what's going to happen is they're going to have one accessibility plan focused on those two areas of employment and service delivery, and then the District of Metchosin will be responsible for the one that is indicative or selected for Metchosin.
Great, thank you. So we've been given this down. Someone else is going to refine it and give it to us in a different format so we can follow up on different ideas.
I think so.
And then you referenced the Metchosin Community Hall. So you were saying it's not accessible. I think the question was, please indicate which venues or type of venues are most accessible for in-person engagement. And then you have the list of Metchosin Community Halls on that list. Thank you. Hit a nerve there, Mayor Little.
Got your attention.
Councillor, yeah.
I really enjoyed reading it too. I thought it was give us a good basis to go on when we start making improvements around the district buildings and so on. But I think was interesting that almost every municipality in this whole committee, people complain about the websites.
Yeah, from
And engagement.
Suit to be royal.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Councillor Sugar.
And just one observation that I found intriguing is question 4, page 63. The question was, in which of the partner municipalities do you live in? It just shows the relatively high level of engagement from the chosen residents. So 77 Langford residents were identified, but after that it's Metchosin in terms of respondents. So 28. And then it goes down from there, so obviously some interest in the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could reflect our older population as well.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. Anything else on this? This is just to receive for information.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then we have correspondence on page 75 for information. This is only one letter for correspondence. On page 75 is a letter from Minister Farnworth from the province of BC regarding the City of Surrey transitioning from the RCMP to its own police force. And this, of course, is a matter that is before the courts as we speak. Anybody have any comments?
Interesting letter.
Yep, it's an interesting letter. Okay, move receipt, Councillor Epp and Councillor Schuken, second. All in favor, opposed, carried. And bylaws, we have the bylaws, the financial plan 2024 to 2028 bylaw number 7700, and the tax rate 2024 bylaw number 701. Councillor Donaldson, did you want to move the recommendation as finance chair?
Yes, I move that the council adopt the financial plan for 2024-2028 bylaw number 700. And you want to do that at the same time?
No, but we'll do them separate.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Carry on.
And that council adopt tax rate 2024 bylaw number 701.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And thank you to staff for that. All of the work that they did on the financial plan and collaborating with the audit. Okay, and then we don't have any more business. We have time for questions. If the three people in the room would like to ask questions.
So my question is, how do I get in touch with somebody at TELUS to complain about the lack of cell service in my area? Because you've been able to, but so can I.
Actually, we had some comments last week about this, and I meant to reach out to Councillor Epp. I think Councillor Epp and I should have another meeting with TELUS and Rogers. Go ahead, Councillor Epp.
I haven't been in touch, not with TELUS, but with Rogers, because I managed to corral the fellow that actually is now kind of in charge of that at the ABICC meeting. And when I called him last week, he said that he would have a report for me this coming week, hopefully, if I don't get it. So I don't know what the report's going to say, but I explained the last situation and how I've been trying for quite a while to get a hold of the Rogers rep unsuccessfully. And so he is the new one, and he seemed to be, he doesn't get back to me at least, so I'm hoping that he'll have at least some news for us by the Public Works Committee meeting on Monday, hopefully.
And perhaps if he doesn't have any useful news for us, you can badger him to get in, so that the residents can complain en masse. The situation that triggered this for me is that it's becoming more and more common, and it happened recently with a form that I filled out online. I think it was for my COVID vaccination, where they asked for a phone number where they could text me. Well, of course, they can't text me because I don't have cell service. But I couldn't complete the form without giving them a phone number. And this kind of thing is becoming more and more common. Organizations, people assume that you have cell service. A bunch of us in Metchosin, surrounded by cell service all the way up to Port Renfrew, don't. And I would hope maybe you can present this to Rogers, that Rogers and TELUS should be embarrassed, greatly embarrassed that this is a situation.
I did bring that up. We had 3 roaming charges last month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Patty Whitehouse of Rocky Point Road. So that's a good reminder for us to reach back out to TELUS as well to see where they are with their promises that they made to us last year. Good point.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to speak this evening? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Council Donaldson, seconded by Council Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Don't forget to keep your grant and aid packages. Save a tree or two.
Your everybody, camera stuff first.
Thanks for the suggestion about putting some information in about the grant and aid.
Sherry, did you hand yours in? It's missing.
Bob Pilot came and picked them all up.
Yeah, exactly. That's just this.